Greetings, true believers. Before we get started with the real review, we didn't do one last week because I was sick and gross. And I'm still sick and gross, but I can't go 2 weeks. That'd be insanity. So before we get to the Ghostbusters, we're going to talk about a book that came out last week that I think everyone should buy. So I'm going to buy it down here, and this will be a really lazy review. All-Star Section 8 came out last week. For those of you who don't know, Section 8 was a part of the acclaimed Hitman series. They were basically a group of just the weirdest, most ragtag superheroes Garth Ennis could imagine up. And they're back. Well, most of them are back. They were led by Six Pack, basically, who gets his powers from being super fucking drunk all the time. And, you know, he teamed up with dudes like Dog Welder and Bueno Excellente, the Defenestrator, Phlegm Jim. Basically a whole bunch of weird dudes. And it ended basically with Six Pack sacrificing himself to basically save everyone in the world. And this book sort of picks up where that left off. He's trying to get the band back together. What's remarkable about this is Garth Ennis. Obviously, it's been years and years and years since Hitman was even a thing, even relevant. And DC has been trying their best to sort of forget about it. It's impressive that DC brought it back. I assume that's due to popular demand. And it's also impressive that Garth Ennis manages to go from, you know, that long ago to still writing these characters and keeping them with mainly the same voice. I will say he brings on, you know, Dog Welder and Bueno Excellente, who one of them doesn't talk, and then the other one only says Bueno. so not exactly hard to keep consistent character voice, but the overall tone and setting matches tit for tat what it was and what it is currently. One thing I will say, negative, DC, if you thought putting the new characters in that Harley Quinn book would make me want to read Harley Quinn, you were wrong. Stop it. You can't get me to read your dumb event books. So take that. So Garth Ennis is obviously writing this, as I said before. John McCreeve is the author. John McCreeve is the artist. He does a really good job of making everything look kind of, I guess it's lighthearted in how, you know, grim, dark, stupid, derpy it is, which is a hard look to pull off, with lots of dudes just looking stupidly proportioned. Like Six Pack has a gut out to here, and it's ugly, and always has boogers and stuff coming out of his nose. He basically looks like me right now. But you know, the art does a good job of keeping that in line, but not making it so crazy that, you know, you never want to see it again. It's disgusting without being super disgusting. Overall, it's a good book, and I'm sad that I missed out on giving you guys a review of it last week. Go and buy All-Star Section 8. It's super worth it. They're always a fun time, and if we buy enough of it, you know, maybe DC will bring back Hitman as a series. Garth Ennis still has it. Alright, and let's get on to the Ghostbusters. Alright, true believers, on to the main event, so to speak, of this review. That is, of course, Ghostbusters Get Real. Now, this is a continuation of IDW's previous Ghostbusters series. What had happened there is that it was a fairly popular series, however, the numbers just couldn't keep up. IDW had to end up scrapping it, but not long before this, they had a crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that did really, really well, and then this book is happening, so I think it's fair to say that IDW is giving the Ghostbusters another shot, I guess. This book is, of course, done by the same individuals who did the IDW Ghostbusters series and the Ghostbusters Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover, which is Eric Burnham and Dan Schoening. What it takes is the IDW Ghostbusters series and Ghostbusters Get Real, the popular cartoon from the 80s, 90s period that I'm sure most of you remember from your childhood. What's interesting about this is that they are rather different worlds thematically. Obviously, the real Ghostbusters was a bit of a more lighthearted romp. It was, after all, a Saturday morning cartoon designed to sell you toys, play sets, and to get you to eat a copious amount of breakfast cereal, whereas this IDW Ghostbusters series, while still funny, while still lighthearted, at times is nowhere near that sort of goofy level that Saturday morning cartoons got at that point. So right off the bat, we see an interesting combination of worlds being presented at us. The comic book itself actually opens with scenes from the real Ghostbusters. That's interesting to note because it sort of puts the ball in their court, almost as if while our IDW Ghostbusters are the more recent ones, are the ones who obviously have the comic book series about them. That opening clearly shows that, hey, the real Ghostbusters were super popular and we want to have them. It's not a matter of us putting them in here nonchalantly. We wanted to tell our story with these characters. What is rather interesting about this book, in addition to that, is the blending of the two worlds. Really quickly into the comic book, the real Ghostbusters do get transported to the IDW Ghostbusters world, so there's not a whole lot of pussyfooting around when it comes to that. It's clear that, hey, this is a crossover. We're not going to waste a lot of time in one world versus the other without two groups of dudes actually interacting. What I do appreciate is that they do use Proteus. He's a character from the real Ghostbusters who showed up in one, maybe 2 episodes, and he wasn't even like a breakout character. He was just sort of interesting, sort of popular. He's basically a god who's used the trope, who wants to stop the Ghostbusters from doing what they're doing, make them sort of a trophy scenario. Now the Ghostbusters bust a ghost for this old voodoo lady, and then go off on their business, and then end up getting attacked by a giant statue from Proteus. She casts a spell to protect them. Boom, they wind up in IDW Ghostbusters universe. It's a pretty straightforward plot as far as Ghostbusters go. Sure, you're getting some magic, but nothing that you're going to be like, wait, what just happened? It's pretty easy to follow in that regard, and that's really one of the strengths of this crossover as a whole, is you can come in having not read any of the IDW Ghostbusters, you can come in having watched none of the real Ghostbusters, and you can still enjoy a cohesive story about Ghostbusters from 2 different universes coming together. Burnham also manages to make the characters similar enough to each other across dimensions, yet still have their own unique voices. For instance, the 2 Peters are both, that sarcastic smartass that Venkman is famous for, but at the same time they've got different styles. They go about it differently, and maybe they don't like each other quite so much because the team can't handle 2 smartasses. The little details like that are what make this crossover rather enjoyable. It's not just, hey, what if we had twice the number of Ghostbusters? It becomes, hey, what if these Ghostbusters met these Ghostbusters? How would they interact? That's really what we want, what we need, and that's what Burnham has given us, and that's what makes this book enjoyable from a writing perspective. Now, I'm going to move on to the art really quick. I have read the IDW Ghostbusters series, and throughout the course of that, I had always thought that while Schoening was a competent artist, he wasn't my favorite part of the series. Schoening really never wowed me in a sense that I was like, you know what? I want this guy on every book, or even on every book of the same caliber. He was he was good, not amazing. Those were my thoughts previously. I am happy to say, with this book, he has shown me his skills as an artist. He manages to blend the 2 styles from the real Ghostbusters, a 1980s cartoon made on, a smaller budget to sell you toys, so it had a very distinct 80s look and feel about how they designed the characters and how they colored the characters, how they did the line work, and he manages to blend that seamlessly with his IDW Ghostbusters style, which is exaggerated in some aspects, subdued in some others, and he manages to blend them together. He doesn't exactly just copy-paste the real Ghostbusters in a different universe looking the exact same. He manages to blend their style into his, and that is something that not a lot of artists could do. All you Greg Lands out there, take a hint. Don't just copy-paste, draw, trace. It's not that. That's not what we want as comic book fans from art. Mr. Schoening, I apologize for thinking less of you as an artist while I was reading just the IDW Ghostbusters series. Honestly, some of his work in this crossover has been some of my favorite examples of blending styles together to create new styles in terms of comic books. I will say, I do still find some of your proportions to be very, very weird when it comes to some of the characters. Heads tend to be big and exaggerated, and that's probably to show the emotion and also just a stylistic choice of your own, but that doesn't exactly make it the easiest to swallow sometimes. All in all, though, this book is a vast improvement on what I thought about Schoening as an artist, and I encourage people to look past any predispositions that they've had about the art in Ghostbusters series previously, because I know this is not exactly a complaint that I just came up with out of the blue. This is something that I've heard from a lot of different comic book fans, and particularly fans of the Ghostbusters series. As a whole, as a package, I think Ghostbusters Get Real is the perfect way to do a crossover within a franchise itself. It blends universes together seamlessly. It creates a story that you don't have to know too much about either universe for, and it creates an enjoyable read overall. When it comes down to it, I'm going to go ahead and give Ghostbusters Get Real a buy it. It's one of the books that I encourage people to go out and get for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, IDW's Ghostbusters series tanked due to sales, and sales alone. It was popular, people were buying it, but not enough. People were trade waiting on that one, people were pirating it. Both of those are incredibly fair, but it did create an unfortunate loss of a series. And I want to avoid that happening again. I want IDW to see sort of the error that was canceling Ghostbusters. But I will not tell you to buy a book just to buy it, to get its sales, so it doesn't get canceled. That isn't how the world works. You want bang for your buck, and Ghostbusters Get Real manages to deliver that. If you are a Ghostbusters fan, you're going to love every single thing about this. If you are someone who's looking for a comic to give to your child to get them into Ghostbusters, or maybe you've shown them Ghostbusters and want to give them more, this book manages to make it into IDW's Ghostbusters series has always been rather child-friendly, and this book is no exception. If you're someone who's never read Ghostbusters but have looked into giving it a try, maybe you liked, the movies or Ghostbusters Get Real, and you're just looking for a fresh take, this is also the book for you. I will say, if you have no desire to be part of anything Ghostbusters, then don't buy the book. It's that simple. This is a book for Ghostbusters fans, or for people looking to be Ghostbusters fans, or for people that are a fan of Saturday morning cartoons or crossovers or those types of things. If none of those appeal to you, then don't buy it. But for everyone else out there with a working, functioning brain that loves Ghostbusters, go out and buy Ghostbusters Get Real. Alright guys, so I'm sorry that this was late. I'm sorry that we didn't do one last week. Summer colds, what can you do? Give me a break. I'm not Superman over here. Remember to follow us on all of our social media, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, yada, yada, yada. You know the deal. I mean, I say it every week. You hear it from countless YouTubers. Just do it for your buddy Dan. I mean, I'm up here every week dancing for you like a trained monkey. Tell me what you thought of Ghostbusters Get Real. Do you think it's worth a buy, worth a borrow, worth a skip? What did you think of All-Star Section 8 for that matter, too? Is it one of those three things again? Is it a fourth thing? It's never a fourth thing. Don't tell me a fourth thing. And so that's all we have for you, and I will see you next time, true believers.